these stories and tales of the supernatural are almost as old as time itself, and knowing about them just so happens to be a special interest of mine. Question for you, what's your favorite ghost story? Mine has to do with an old Art Deco movie theater. It's called the LaSalle. It's up in a place called Kirkland Lake. You've probably never heard of it. But let me know yours in the comments, and let's dive into some old-timey classics together today. Let's start off with the obvious, the Winchester Mystery House. We're going back in time to 1886 when an eccentric widow left her home in Connecticut for California's rural Santa Clara Valley to start a new life after the very tragic loss of not one, but several family members. She wasn't just your average widow. She was Sarah Winchester, the millionaire heiress whose fortune was derived from the ill-fated Winchester rifle. Once in the Bay Area, during the height of spiritualism and well before the 19th Amendment, she managed her own finances and acted on a passion for architecture and design by overseeing the never-ending construction project of this rambling mansion. Her reclusive lifestyle, along with the restrictive gender norms of the era and the cursed money she was associated with, caused a lot of neighbors and the local press to speculate, and legends began to quickly swirl about the mysterious woman in her bewildering house. Even though it was a modern marvel at the time, with indoor plumbing, multiple elevators, a hot shower, central heating, the mansion was appraised as having no value because of doors that opened to nothing but thin air, staircases that led into the ceiling, and its overall just maze of labyrinthine hallways. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Agnafo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. Visitors to the house to this day have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and overall feelings of being watched. Heck, I've got a friend that works there and he's corroborated all of that. In January of 1898, it was reported that a mysterious figure with the ghastly appearance of a headless woman was haunting an isolated crossroad outside of Buckingham. The phantom was first witnessed by a well-known local farmer and his companion, which, alrighty pal. According to him, the night was well advanced and dark when suddenly this farmer saw, and it was a couple of yards in front of him, this crazy figure. He called out because the figure was blocking his path, but there was no answer, and the figure remained motionless. As he got closer, he noticed the otherworldly appearance of this woman, and his horse began to tremble like a leaf. In shock, he called out again. "What do you do there? Move on, please." Once again, he heard nothing. The horse panicked and bashed into a ditch, forcing the farmer's companion to jump down and seize the reins. The figure vanished, but reappeared again when the farmer and the companion went to ride on. The farmer called out for God, and that's when the eerie figure left for good for that evening. But numerous others later claimed to have witnessed the ghost, and the reporter for the newspaper that reported on all of this said it was not surprising that recently not a lot of people want to go by that area. Massachusetts has no shortage of haunted mansions, and the Sylvester K. Pierce house is one of the state's eeriest. The original occupant, which I'm sure you can guess his name, had just started making his fortune in the furniture business when he built this home for himself, his son, and his wife Susan. Only a week after moving into the home, Susan fell ill and passed away from a mysterious bacterial disease. A year later, Sylvester decided to marry Ellen, a woman 30 years his junior, and then had 2 more descendants. Years later, when both Sylvester and Ellen had passed away, his sons embarked on a fiery feud about the property, as well as the furniture company, but the Great Depression swept in and made their choice pretty easy because the company went bankrupt. So the youngest son, Edward, was given control of the home, and he turned it into a boarding house, and it became a hotspot for illicit activities. And as a result of these violent ends, guests have reported every kind of haunting imaginable. We're talking visions of apparition, flying objects, disembodied sounds, pressure, temperature drops, and more. In December of 1878, it was reported that an old man named Churchill was killed in a cottage near Chard. For a period of time after the execution, the building remained empty. Eventually, a working man and his family moved in, but they found it wasn't the home sweet home they were looking for. According to public record, Churchill's killer, who goes by the name of Kitty, has been frequently seen gliding about the premises in ghostly attire. Also, old Churchill himself is hanging out, looking in at the windows, and never with a happy expression on his face. So when you combine this to the appearance of human redness on the floor of the room in which the tragedy was enacted, and supernatural movements from the furniture and other things, and also unearthly noises, the family fled the house, and it's been abandoned ever since. In November of 1897, a news story came to life that terrified the heck out of a lot of people. In the town of Plumstead, a ghostly spirit appearing in all white was terrifying young humans to the point of them being bedridden from fright. This ghost mainly haunted the grounds of the St. James Church and schools and was witnessed by around 100 folks or more. So people were like, okay, let's fight the ghosts, and they were gonna throw stones at it. But it didn't work as a deterrent. All that was accomplished? Well, they broke some windows, so people got arrested, because you can't vandalize. In September of 1881, it was reported that a Garstang postman had resigned after a chilling encounter with what he described as a nocturnal visitant. The paper reported that the facts of the case seemed sufficiently authenticated, which is credible enough for me. So apparently our postman was quietly perusing his way along a lonely road near the village of Garstang, absorbed in his work, when a ghost stopped his way and warned him, with many mysterious signs, not to continue on with what he was doing. Well, Buddy was terrified, so he listened to the warnings and bolted out of pure fear. He described the figure as being of abnormal stature, with a horrid pallor of hue, and a variety of terror-striking gestures. Make of that what you will. His description of the ghost was corroborated by the testimony of another witness. A young woman of that same district also had a dreadful look at the specter. Poor thing was out alone for a walk late at night, which is scary enough, when she ran into the creature that she claimed was of fearsome height, clothed in white, and performing crazy movements with its arms. She immediately threw her coat over her head and ran home to hide. Having got there safely, she went to bed and told the police her story the next day. Poor thing. In August of 1895, an extraordinary scene was witnessed during the early hours of Wednesday, the 21st, in the churchyard of the parish church of St. John at Hackney, when about 1,000 men and women came out to ghost hunt. Why not? So, before this, for a period of time, people passing through the churchyard late at night had been startled by the appearance of a ghost. Women would faint with fright, and the local newspapers were writing a lot of stories being like, hey, what's going on? So on the Tuesday night, between 10 to 11 o'clock, a mixed crowd began to assemble at the back of the church, where the ghost was supposed to be, and where normally people don't go there after that late at night. I think it got until like after midnight, and then when no ghost was appearing, the crowd was like, let's go looking for it. They were armed with lanterns, candles, they had sticks, they had stones, so they climbed the railings and took possession of the burial ground. They were climbing over graves and tombstones. They were trampling down recently buried people, which, side note, I'm cringing because that's so disrespectful to the dead. Don't do that, you're gonna get more ghosts that way. A portion of the crowd looked upon all of this and was like, okay, it's a joke. And every couple of minutes somebody was like, oh, there it goes, and then everybody would run in that direction. Other folks were like, okay, we're bored. Let's have some fun. And yes, the police did show up at some point to get everybody out of there, but it wasn't until daylight that the last stragglers finally got out. After all this, well, the damage to the graves was very, very bad, and efforts were made to prevent any further demonstration. Good. There was a lot of complaints made by people present of having their pockets picked, and the tomb from which the ghost was supposed to appear was this grave at the back of the church, where the stone was showing 3 guys playing cards on a table. The origin of the story is apparently that 7 years prior, 3 guys were playing cards for money. One of them, who was losing, was like, may God strike me dead if I do not win this game. And when he went to leave the table, he dropped dead, and his ghost is hanging out there. Well, folks, don't tempt fate. Easy as that. In April of 1877, a curious story emerged from Altershot. It seemed like for some time the sentries on 2 outlying posts had been frightened to death by the appearance at night of 2 spectral-looking figures. Now these figures were glowing with phosphorus and were just overall alarming, and were in the habit of suddenly manifesting themselves, making tremendous springs of 10 or 12 steps at a time and alarming sentries before they could do anything in defense. Apparently the ghosties didn't cause any actual bodily harm, they were just happy with causing mischief and worry, and then it got to the point where like sentry duty had to be doubled up on for safety. What would today be without some Edgar Allan Poe? The Telltale Heart just so happens to be one of my favorite stories, so I thought I'd share the real story today. And there's been a couple of different real-life killers that have been used as inspiration for Poe's tale. For starters, the 1830 killing of Joseph White of Salem, Massachusetts, and the special prosecutor on the case, Daniel Webster, published his argument on the trial as a pamphlet. He wrote that the killer's guilt will eventually reveal itself, and that the secret which the killer possesses will soon come to possess him. It'll overcome him. He'll feel it beating at his heart, rising to his throat, demanding closure. He says the whole world's gonna see it in this guy's face, read it in his eyes, and hear it's working in the very silence of his thoughts. It will become his master. Whereas another source is the 1840 trial of James Wood for the death of his daughter. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity, so the jury was kind of out on if he was crazy or not. The reporter covering the trial stated that although Wood's calm demeanor might lead some to believe him a premeditated assassin rather than a madman, he believes this calmness is merely the cunning of the maniac, a cunning which baffles that of the wisest man of sound mind, the amazing self-possession with which, at times, he assumes the demeanor and preserves the appearance of perfect sanity. The jury in the case ruled in Wood's favor and sent him to an asylum. Oh, almost forgot one teensy little detail. That reporter? Edgar Allan Poe. And we might as well end today with another tale I learned about way too young in life, the Monkey's Paw. It's a classic case of you get what you wish for, and that wishing for solutions in life instead of doing the work yourself is gonna lead to misfortune. This guy wished for $200 flippantly and got it because his son passed in a freak accident. Then he wished for his son to come back and wound up with a zombie. Not good. You see, back in the Victorian era, there was this whole craze around exotic artifacts from far off lands. People were bringing back all sorts of weird stuff from their travels. Shrunken heads, voodoo dolls, and they were just displaying them like trophies. I can think of somebody I know who still does this, but that's not the point. He's also haunted. These items were known to curse the unlucky, and people should leave buried things be or risk misfortune. And that's it for me, folks. I've been Alexa, the resident emo girly. See y'all next time I buzz in over here at Bumblebee.